The Cursed Tree of Blackwood Hollow, written by Ethan Blackwood and narrated by Sebastian Wolfe. In the small, remote town of Blackwood Hollow, whispers of ghostly apparitions and strange occurrences had persisted for generations. The town's dark past was shrouded in mystery, and the truth of the haunting events remained elusive. Johnathan Alder, an investigator of the paranormal, was intrigued by the stories and rumors he had heard about Blackwood Hollow. Determined to uncover the truth behind the town's supernatural mysteries, Johnathan packed his bags and headed straight for the heart of the enigmatic town. Upon his arrival, he was met with both curiosity and suspicion by the townspeople. Some were relieved that someone had finally taken an interest in the strange events plaguing their town, while others feared what Johnathan might uncover. As he delved deeper into the town's history, he found that the stories were not just simple legends, but had roots in the very fabric of the community. One of the first places Johnathan visited was the town's library, where he hoped to find more information about Blackwood Hollow's past. The librarian, a kind old woman named Mrs. Pennington, proved to be a wealth of knowledge on the subject. She recounted tales of missing people, unexplained noises, and ghostly sightings that had been reported throughout the town's history. Armed with this new information, Johnathan set out to explore the town and speak to its residents. He interviewed the local shopkeepers, who told him about the eerie feeling that sometimes accompanied them as they closed up shop for the night. He spoke to the town's oldest resident, Mr. Hawthorne, who claimed to have seen a ghostly figure roaming the streets late at night. With each new account, Johnathan became more and more intrigued by the mysterious happenings in Blackwood Hollow. He realized that the key to understanding the town's dark past might lie in the one place that seemed to be at the center of it all, the abandoned church. The old church, long since abandoned, stood at the edge of the forest. Its once pristine walls had succumbed to decay, and the building was now a shadow of its former self. The townspeople spoke of the church in hushed tones, as if the mere mention of it could invite misfortune. Johnathan, undeterred by the ominous warnings, made his way to the church. The heavy wooden doors groaned in protest as he pushed them open, revealing the dark, dusty interior. A sense of unease settled over him, but he was determined to continue his investigation. As he explored the crumbling building, Johnathan noticed that the church seemed to be caught in a state of perpetual twilight, despite the bright sun shining outside. He found himself drawn to the altar, where a large, ornate book lay open. Upon closer inspection, he realized that it was an ancient ledger containing records of the townspeople who had lived and died in Blackwood Hollow. Johnathan carefully leafed through the pages, pausing to read the names and stories of the people who had once called the town home. He noticed a pattern emerging. Every few generations, the records showed an increase in unexplained deaths and disappearances. As he continued to study the ledger, Johnathan heard a faint, haunting melody drifting through the church. The eerie music seemed to be coming from the forest just beyond the church's walls. Compelled by curiosity, he decided to follow the sound, hoping it might lead him to the source of the supernatural events plaguing Blackwood Hollow. Leaving the church behind, Johnathan ventured deeper into the forest, guided only by the ghostly melody that seemed to grow louder with each step he took. The further he went, the more he felt as though he was being watched by unseen eyes. The atmosphere within the forest grew heavier, and the air seemed to cling to Johnathan's skin like a damp shroud. The trees seemed to close in around him, their twisted branches reaching out like gnarled fingers, trying to grasp at him. Still, he pressed on, unable to resist the pull of the haunting melody. As he delved deeper into the heart of the forest, Johnathan stumbled upon a small clearing. There, in the center, stood a magnificent ancient oak tree. The tree's trunk was so massive, it would have taken several people to wrap their arms around it. Its branches stretched high into the sky, blocking out the sun and casting eerie shadows on the ground below. Upon closer inspection, Johnathan noticed that the tree was adorned with hundreds of meticulously crafted wooden figurines. Each one was unique, bearing the likeness of a person. The craftsmanship was so intricate, it seemed as though the figurines were almost alive. Jonathan's heart raced as he realized that the faces of the figurines were all too familiar. They were the faces of the people who had disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances in Blackwood Hollow, the very same individuals he had read about in the ancient ledger. As he stood in the clearing, the haunting melody reached a crescendo, filling the air around him. Johnathan felt an overwhelming urge to carve a figurine of his own. He found himself picking up a piece of wood and a carving knife that seemed to have been left there for him. With each stroke of the knife, Johnathan felt a sense of purpose and connection to the tree, as if he were an instrument of some greater force. The wood yielded easily under his skilled hands, taking the shape of his missing wife, Elizabeth. As he added the final touches, the figurine seemed to come to life in his hands, a perfect likeness of her. The melody seemed to grow even stronger, urging Johnathan to place the newly carved figurine among the others on the tree. As he did so, a sudden and inexplicable feeling of dread washed over him. The wind picked up, causing the figurines to sway and dance as though they were restless spirits. The haunting melody that had once seemed so beautiful now took on a sinister quality, and Johnathan knew he had to leave the clearing. He stumbled through the forest, the melody still echoing in his ears, calling him back to the tree. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had unleashed something terrible upon himself and the people of Blackwood Hollow. As he finally emerged from the forest, Johnathan found himself standing at the edge of the village. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the ground, and the villagers were returning to their homes for the night. Johnathan stumbled back to his house, desperate to find some way to undo what he had done. He pored over the ancient ledger, searching for any clues or answers. As the hours ticked by, his eyes grew heavy, and he drifted into a fitful sleep. In his dreams, Johnathan found himself back at the tree in the clearing, surrounded by the wooden figurines. The haunting melody played on, more alluring than ever. As he reached out to touch one of the figurines, it suddenly sprang to life, its wooden limbs twisting and cracking as it transformed into a living being. The figure, now a beautiful woman, looked at Johnathan with sadness in her eyes. She introduced herself as the spirit of the tree, a guardian of the forest, and she had been trapped within the tree by an ancient curse. The figurines Johnathan had carved were her attempts to communicate with the world and break the curse, but instead, she had unwittingly bound the souls of the villagers to her. She explained that with each figurine he had carved, a villager had fallen ill, their life force slowly drained away to fuel her own strength. Johnathan was horrified, realizing that his wife's disappearance and the illness plaguing Blackwood Hollow were all because of his actions. The spirit pleaded with him to find a way to break the curse and free the trapped souls, including his wife's. Johnathan awoke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. The dream had felt so real, and he knew that he had to make things right. With renewed determination, he returned to the ledger, studying it closely. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, he found what he was looking for, a ritual to break the curse and release the trapped souls. Gathering the necessary materials, Johnathan set out for the tree in the clearing. The ritual would require him to return each carved figurine to its rightful place upon the branches of the tree. He knew that if he succeeded, he could save his wife and the people of Blackwood Hollow, but if he failed, the curse would consume them all. With shaking hands, Johnathan began the ritual, his voice echoing through the forest as he recited the ancient words. The wind howled around him, and the tree seemed to shudder in response. As he placed the last figurine on the tree, a blinding light erupted from the trunk, enveloping the entire clearing. When the light faded, Johnathan saw that the tree had transformed, its twisted branches now adorned with delicate white blossoms. The wooden figurines had vanished, replaced by the spectral forms of the villagers, including his wife. One by one, they smiled at him, their spirits now freed from the curse, and they faded away, returning to their rightful place in the afterlife. Johnathan returned to Blackwood Hollow, his heart heavy with both sorrow and relief. Though he had lost his wife, he knew that she was finally at peace. In time, the village began to heal, the illness that had plagued them disappearing as suddenly as it had arrived. The once dreaded forest now stood as a symbol of hope and renewal, a testament to the power of love and the strength of the human spirit. And so, Johnathan continued his life in Blackwood Hollow, forever changed by his encounter with the spirit of the tree. The haunting melody of the forest remained with him, a constant reminder of the price he had paid and the love that had set them all free.